Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a really fascinating recent editorial series, and it's dedicated to a concept that is completely flipping how we view crisis management on its head. We're talking about invisible dependencies. You know, when a major crisis hits, everyone's immediate instinct is to just blame the technology, right? But what we're going to unpack today is that major crises are rarely just caused by a tech failure alone. Instead, they expose something absolutely critical that organizations almost always miss: their invisible dependencies. So let's dive into why these hidden links are actually the secret to true operational resilience.
Okay, let's kick things off with a question that honestly sounds a bit backwards at first. Think about this for a second. If you successfully rebuild your entire information system, why can't you serve your customers? It's a provocative thought, isn't it? Because most of us are completely conditioned to think that IT recovery is basically the exact same thing as business recovery. We just naturally assume that, hey, if the servers are humming and the apps are back online, the business is back in action. But as you'll see, an organization can have its entire tech stack flawlessly restored and still be literally paralyzed.
And the reason for that disconnect comes down to the stark difference between technical recovery and business recovery. On the technical side, sure, you've got your servers, your backups, your infrastructure. Those are absolutely essential, but at the end of the day, they are just enablers. Getting them back online doesn't mean you're actually generating business value yet. Because on the business side, recovery is a whole different ballgame. Your apps might be up, but what if critical executive approvals are missing? Or what if your business data hasn't actually been validated yet? What if your suppliers are still down, or massive executive decisions are just sitting there pending? Technical recovery is merely stage one. Business recovery is an entirely different, much more complex beast.
All right, moving into our first main section here, revealing invisible dependencies. What lies beneath the infrastructure?
So there is this massive operational blind spot in most companies today. Organizations are usually fantastic at documenting their hard assets. I mean, they know exactly what servers they own, what switches are in the rack, every software license they've bought. But they almost never document the operational relationships that actually make all those assets work together. Think about it. A specific business activity relies heavily on an approval. A customer delivery is totally dependent on a third-party supplier. A huge strategic decision requires trusted data. These relationships usually aren't written down anywhere. They just happen because people work together every day. A crisis doesn't magically create these dependencies. It just strips away the normal, comfortable routine and ruthlessly exposes them.
And you know where those hidden links usually live? Mostly within people. Let's look at these invisible human dependencies. We're talking about that one approval process that literally only a specific person knows how to navigate. Or supplier relationships that rely entirely on years of personal trust. It's operational expertise that someone just picked up through experience. Or business rules that, well, let's be honest, have just never been formally written down. And maybe most importantly, executive decisions that always seem to bottleneck at one single person. These dependencies are totally invisible, right up until the exact moment that key person is out of reach. But here's the real takeaway. Operational resilience is not about eliminating human dependencies. That's impossible. It's about making them visible now so you can prep realistic alternatives before everything hits the fan.
And hey, that exact same logic applies to your data, which brings us to a really crucial concept, the point of truth. Applications on their own don't create much value. The real value is in the information they hold. But, and this is a big but, only if you can actually trust that information. Losing a server? Sure, that's a disruption. But losing confidence in your core business data? That creates profound, terrifying uncertainty. Without a rock-solid point of truth, executive decision-making just grinds to a halt and eventually paralyzes your entire leadership team. You absolutely have to know what data you can trust when the rest of the world is completely chaotic.
Which leads us perfectly into our next section, the time governance variable, and some really fascinating lessons from Greenvolt Energy.
Let's look at how this totally reframes our understanding of time during a crisis. Imagine you have two identical organizations, and they both suffer the exact same cyber attack. Same infrastructure, same initial disruption. The only difference here is time. The first organization gets word they can recover in 4 hours. The second one, they're looking at 3 weeks. Are their executive committees going to make the same decisions? No way. In the 4-hour scenario, the most logical governance decision is simply to wait. Don't panic, hold off on any major shifts. But in that 3-week scenario, it's a completely different reality. You have to activate business continuity immediately. You're getting on the phone with customers, you're engaging suppliers, and you are completely revising every operational priority you have. The crisis itself fundamentally changes just because the time factor changed.
And that right there brings us to a massive paradigm shift.
Recovery time is not just some tech estimate cooked up by the IT department. It is a governance variable. It's the core metric that dictates exactly how leadership is going to react. And that is exactly why time acts as the natural connecting thread pulling together your business impact analysis, your disaster recovery, and your crisis response plan. At the end of the day, time dictates the governance.
Let's zoom out a bit for Section 3, Achieving True Anti-Fragility.
Now, resilience is great, for sure. It allows an organization to take a hit, recover, and survive. But anti-fragility? That goes a giant step further. It is the ability of an organization to actively improve and evolve precisely because of a disruption. Think about how wild that is. You aren't just bouncing back to your baseline. The actual stress of the event forces the organization to get stronger and smarter than it was before the crisis even happened.
So how do you actually achieve that? Well, it's a pretty clear, continuous progression. First, you have to survive the crisis. Second, you rigorously learn from that disruption. And not just crises, actually. You learn from every single audit, every exercise, every minor operational hiccup. And third, you make sure those lessons are baked in so they leave the organization fundamentally stronger than before. Operational resilience stops being this one-time project in a binder, gathering dust on a shelf. It becomes a living, breathing, permanent capability.
Which ushers in this whole new standard, demonstrable operational resilience. The contrast between the old way and the new way is honestly night and day. The old way was literally all about presenting documentation. You'd count up the number of procedures, recovery plans, and backups you had, and the ultimate goal was basically just crossing your fingers and surviving. But the new way expects actual results. Are you making objective, continuous progress? Your metrics aren't documents anymore. They're based on how fast your executives can make critical decisions and how much you've actively reduced your operational fragility. The whole goal shifts to a constantly evolving operational understanding. And eventually, this all rolls up into an objective operational resilience score. All right, let's bring it all together in our final section, the ransom kick approach and Archionius.app.
How do we practically make this shift to the new way? Well, it's through the ransom kick resilience model. This is an entirely fresh way of looking at organizations. Step 1, you abandon the tech-first mindset entirely and you start directly with business value. Step 2, you meticulously map out all those vital operational dependencies we talked about earlier. Step 3, you identify your points of truth so your leaders actually have trusted information in a crisis. And Step 4, you connect all of this directly to governance and executive decisions. It brilliantly links your business continuity, disaster recovery, and crisis response into one single, coherent operational picture of the business.
Now you might be wondering, how on earth do you realistically maintain all those incredibly complex relationships over time? You can't just do it in a spreadsheet. That is exactly where Archionius.app comes into play. It doesn't replace your established methods, and it certainly doesn't replace human executive judgment. Instead, it gives you a structured operational environment. It actively connects your business objects right into your continuity and disaster recovery strategies. So every single time you run a tabletop exercise or deal with a minor incident, that data continuously feeds back in and enriches the system. The end result? This comprehensive visibility dramatically accelerates how fast your executives can make the right decisions.
I want to wrap up this explainer with a quote that I think absolutely nails the core of this entire paradigm shift. Organizations do not become resilient because they own more technology. They become resilient because they understand themselves better. That deep understanding is what keeps the value flowing. It strengthens your governance, it prepares you for whatever crisis is around the corner, and it is the absolute bedrock of true operational anti-fragility.
So I'm going to leave you with one final thought-provoking question to chew on today. Does your organization just own more technology, or does it actually understand itself better? If this sparks something for you and you want to dive deeper into building a coherent operational map of your own business, all the concepts from this editorial cycle are being expanded into comprehensive white papers right now. I highly encourage you to follow Fabian Polisotis or the Ransom Kick page on LinkedIn so you get notified the second those resources, along with more info on the Ransom Kick resilience model and Archionius.app drop. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep learning, and we'll see you next time.